100,000 leaked WhatsApp messages revealed.
God, some poor so-and-so's had to go through those.
I think it's fantastic, actually. I mean, Isabel Oakeshott is given them all so she can write about Matt Hancock without Matt Hancock ever realising that they could be used by anyone else. And I know that, she shouldn't have, but on the other hand, you just can't help smiling because this man is so totally self-obsessed that he only wanted to use his WhatsApp messages for himself. He didn't care about what was happening with COVID. And yet again, it's all about him.
So, we should explain it. Isabel Oakeshott co-wrote the Pandemic Diaries, the Matt Hancock
Which
book.
I'm sure you've read.
Which I'm sure we all got for Christmas.
That's a revisionist one where he kind of left out anything that he wasn't heroic.
Well, she's now putting in what he left out.
So
and
he gave her all of his WhatsApps in order to write the diaries.
Yeah, bad move, mate.
And then she's she then presumably got paid to help co-write the partial account. And then, having taken all the bits out, she's now got all those bits and given them.
But I think her excuse actually is quite plausible. Is that she goes through the different countries that have already done their review and done their inquiry into COVID and the pandemic, and we haven't. We're literally years away from it. And by the time we ever actually report on this and on what happened in the pandemic, everyone's going to have forgotten it. So what she's saying is, you know what, I wanted this all to come out now. So I'm sure that's not what she wanted. What she wanted was a sensational.
But she wasn't off the record because they were all on the record for the biography. So it's and somebody's done a bit of poor contractual work with Isabel Oakeshott there. They didn't get her to sign an NDA or anything. There's
been some suggestion. People suggest she might have signed an NDA.
I think she may have signed one, actually.
Somebody's messaged in, because we were talking about Theresa May's won an award for best speech of the year.
Yeah, which she deserved.
We asked for other unlikely political awards. Niall says Isabel Oakeshott for trusted confidant.
Yes.
And I think even James Bethell, who was a health minister, said this morning, I think Isabel's a terrific journalist. She's not a very good friend, which is also possibly true.
But that's what this problem was. It was all about friends. It's all very kind of cliquey and we're getting in all this together. And it horrified me that you could see that Matt Hancock was saying stuff that a lot of them didn't believe in and knew was wrong, particularly on care homes. And they didn't question him because A, he was a friend, and B, they didn't sort of want to upset him, you felt, in some ways.
Yeah, it's kind of groupthink.
It's massive groupthink. And I think, it is important that we hear this.
Is it groupthink? Because actually what was
not from Chris Whitty.
The slight problem with the Telegraph stories. It's trying to argue that it's both groupthink and ministers didn't do what they were told to do.
Well, I think it is both, actually, because I think the groupthink comes from the ministers and comes from some of the civil servants, and then actually it's Chris Whitty on the other side and the scientists, and they kept saying, we are following the science. We were told that the whole way through the pandemic.
That was the mantra, especially to begin with.
We were expected to believe that, and actually what happens is it's all political, isn't it? I mean, that's what they were doing. It was all about politics.
And I suppose because I think it was the Lib Dems put out a press release this morning saying revealed the messages lay bare the chaos at the heart of the government. It's like, of course there was chaos.
Yeah,
we were in the middle of a pandemic when we didn't have masses of. I feel like I'm sort of mounting the case of Matt Hancock here. We didn't have masses of tests. We didn't have. I mean, there's an argument about why we didn't, which is more a question for Jeremy Hunt than for Matt Hancock.
But Chris Whitty gave very clear advice about care homes, and it was pretty obvious to all of us with the care homes that you really, really didn't want people going in there who had COVID and being shut down.
But the argument this morning, which Matt Hancock, in his many statements he's put out, is that what this leaves out is there was a meeting where they said they didn't have the capacity to do it. Right. So when confronted with that, you have to make a choice about.
So what does he mean then about muddies the waters?
Well, that's not clear. That is literally not clear. Because why? I mean, because what does that mean in terms of what would work to stop COVID getting into?
Yes, it just sounds like that muddies the messaging waters as opposed to what should have been.
Which I suppose it just means he wanted to announce they were testing the people going into.
I think the whole narrative that it was all chaos, it was all it was like the Blitz kind of thing is convenient, isn't it? It doesn't seem that Patrick Vallance and Chris Whitty they didn't look like ever particularly chaotic people at any stage. They look very sober, very measured. They were given the advice, which was supposed to be being followed. Yeah. And the chaos was in trying to escape not pay the political price for what was going wrong.
But, Patrick Vallance talked about herd immunity at one stage and changed his mind. I mean, I suppose that's the point, is that it's all with the benefit of hindsight.
But also, I think what is important is that we have this inquiry really quickly, because if we don't have it for the next 5 years and it carries on, we're not going to know what's happening. We're not going to know if there are any solutions to this or what we could do or how we could do it better next time. And if there is another pandemic, we need to have some of those things coming out.
And there is a big part of all this where the Telegraph for some time has been sceptical and critical of the idea of lockdowns.
Yes.
And so it's called the Lockdown Files, even though nothing really in it so far is about lockdowns.
Because they didn't think the lockdown should have happened.
Because they don't think the lockdown should have happened.
Yeah, and the other danger is with the delay is there's a natural human desire. I mean, I feel it quite powerfully myself to put the whole thing behind
to
us.
never think about it again. Yeah.
To think, oh God, what a dreadful 2 years that was. Do we
Yeah,
really have to? Do we really have to pick over it? I know that you.
My mother died. So every time this comes up again, I think, oh my God, my mother was in a care home, my father was in a care home, and I've now got to think about the whole thing all over again.
Yeah.
And you don't really want to think about it. Is the awful thing. You actually do, as Robert says, put it behind you, but you can't if it keeps coming up. I'd much prefer to get the inquiry over, or not have an inquiry at all. I don't want to spend, 100 million quid on an inquiry that's not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
By getting anywhere, we really mean finding somebody responsible, and that is hard, isn't it? It's going to be hard to sort of pin the blame on somebody.
Well, because it will turn out that Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance made some good decisions, and they made some bad.
Because
it'll turn out that Matt Hancock made some good things, and
I always thought if there was capacity in this for a scandal, it was going to be about care homes, because that seemed to me such an obviously bad decision, and the death rate in care homes was so high. But I don't think this is it quite yet. I
think what is interesting is the Swedish experiment, because they did change everything. They didn't, schools were left open. It was much more free, and they've just had their report. And I haven't read that report. And actually, that is one report I want to read. I want to see whether or not, because they actually had a lower death rate than we did. So,
but not significantly, did they?
No, but at the same time, probably children were less impacted. In fact, they know children were less impacted because they didn't have to stop going to school. So it would be interesting to compare that country. That would give us
especially
something.
when you've got to consider that our death rate kind of now includes people who are dying from cancer that they can't get appointments for, or heart attacks in the street, and
also
so
it's one of those things where if we go back, the public loved lockdown.
Yes.
The support for lockdown. I remember 1 in 5 people wanted to shut nightclubs forever.
Yeah.
Not just for now.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether it will start becoming. It was a bit like the Iraq War. Within a couple of years, no one will be able to remember having supported lockdown because it was obviously a stupid idea. I thought it was a good idea. Or much like Andrew Pridgeon. Anyway, let's move on because there's no need to. I've mentioned Andrew Pridgeon now.